Here's what I'm curious about. How many of you here and maybe watching are fortunate enough to actually have something that you can put your heart and soul into? As was mentioned in the intro, are you maybe an artist who really has had this opportunity to put your heart and soul in something that you've had a chance to create? That you're an activist that's been able to put your heart and soul into a movement? That maybe you are an entrepreneur, you are a leader who's been able to put your heart and soul into some kind of a venture or organization. And I really hope that all of you as students here, that tends to be ignored. It tends to be something that's a throwaway line. And we recognize that even though it's related to the heart, it really is different. And almost everyone who's thrown out this line, I've put my heart and soul into it, I've asked this question, so what is the soul of your work? What is the soul of the organization? And almost to a person, they've said, interesting. Nobody has ever asked me that question. And so that's the question I want to spend just a few minutes with you trying to explore. What is the soul of your work? And is it important? By the way, it just dawned on me, and I was looking it up real quick. I remember the very first movie, and it freaked me out, was The Wizard of Oz. Did it freak any of you out there? And I think it's interesting that all of the characters, one was missing the head, one was missing the heart, one was missing courage, but there was no representative of the soul. And it may be why that it's been left out. And so why is it such a critical topic, at least for me? For me, I feel like it's probably the most important insight I've been able to discern over these 4 decades of working with artists and creatives and the like. And I think first is because the most successful artists and movers and shakers, those that we really have seen out there, take something big in the world, the Dalis, the Mother Teresas. Steve Jobs, who my kids kid me about, is always in every one of my talks. And of course, most recently here, Elon Musk. What is it about that they put into their organizations, into their work, that allows them to do something so massive into the world, the impact that they're able to have? And I believe it is this component of soul. And the issue is that it's often a very irrational kind of energy. It's a kind of unnamed magic. In a way, it's almost this secret sauce that they've added that everyone else on the outside would think is crazy, that gets them to be labeled crazy and maniacal and weird in many cases. And what I feel like that's done is create these walls between the rest of us and them. And I think I've come to learn that we tend to build walls between things and people that we don't understand or that we misunderstand. And so if we could give a language to it, then we could understand it better. Now, in my world of kind of ventures and entrepreneurship, in a really practical sense, what's been frustrating for me is, and for many of you, you've seen it, we've got these friends that have sold their businesses to a private equity firm or to a strategic, only for them to kill your baby. And I mean, accidentally kill it. I don't think they do it on purpose. No, none of them want to buy a company and kill it. That would be financial suicide, except I do think there's a few that are what I'm going to call organ harvesters, or in language tonight, soul suckers. But look, for the rest of them, they really do want it to succeed. They just don't understand why they killed it. And the founders themselves are dumbfounded by, they sense that there's something wrong. They know it. But they can't put their finger on it. There's been no word for it of why this has happened. And what in a practical sense happens is that there's this irrational set of decisions that I think only the creators, the founders, have the soul to make, that many cases don't make sense on paper, and so the accountants discount it, and that ends up being why the soul gets killed and thus the venture. Is it possible for you to take the soul and bring it to other ventures, as we're going to see Randy Amon's been able to do? Is it possible for us to take an organization that already has an unbelievable purpose, but's not been able to realize it, and can we insert a soul that might allow it to soar which we're going to see with my buddy Teester. And ultimately, is it possible for someone to pass their soul on to someone else, as Mother Teresa did, Nathan Gray? And so, are you guys ready to go search for some souls with me? And that's what I want to do. And so I've gone on this search, and I thought, look, the very first guy I emailed on this topic was my buddy Teester. Who better to know the soul of their organization than somebody who's CEO of Souls for Souls? You can't make this up. Now, what does this organization do? It has a very important purpose. What it does, it works with major retailers of clothing and shoes who have this excess inventory that rather than sending it to the landfill, and they've been able to divert over 9 million pounds, keeping it out of that waste stream, and being able to set up people in places like Haiti and Honduras and Belize where they can then take this product and sell it so they can create some amazing economics for themselves and get these products to folks who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford them. And so I emailed Buddy. And I said, all right, what is the soul of this organization? And that was his email back to me. And he knew it in a word, and that's what I'm discovering. This soul, very much like our purpose statements that we've learned to create over the last couple of decades, really does come down to a word or a phrase. And his is partnership. Now, we gave him a phone call, and here's the key. Here's the thing I've heard from every one of the creatives that's identified their soul. They always say this, yeah, but I mean something deeper than just what people think partnership means. I take it further than what other people think it means. And in fact, as we did an article, and it was released today on Buddy, we shared how there have been some irrational, quite expensive decisions that he's had to fight with his board on, but as a result, he's been able to 5x this organization on its way to creating $1 billion worth of economic value. Now, what were some of those? First of all, when he took over the organization in 2012, they had this distributor in Haiti, and I mean, Haiti has been a mess. And look, it made no sense to keep him as a distributor, but he was completing their purpose, their mission, and so Buddy has hung in with him for all of this decade plus. They had a woman in Dallas who wanted to open up some stores in Belize, and she needed $10,000. Now, that's not the business they're in, but Buddy made the decision just to give her the $10,000. Their partnership with Crocs, they wanted to really be able to redistribute those, but a lot of the Crocs they were getting back couldn't be resold. They needed to be recycled. And so, one of the biggest decisions Buddy had to push his board at the nonprofit to make was to spend 5 figures actually buying a bunch of shredders so they could provide that 100% solution to Croc. That's what they meant in way of partnership. But it was this last paragraph, and by the way, there's his line, but it was his last couple of lines that really gave me an insight to how to look at soul. He said, look, we have our why, we have our BHAG, but what matters, the ethos, and there was the first word, is how we're able to bring life to that soul, how we're able to actually deliver on the purpose, the promises, and the passions that we've got. And at that moment, it dawned on me that Aristotle, if you wanted to convince anyone, it had this framework: logos, pathos, and ethos. If you want to think about it, head, heart, and soul. And I got a little help from ChatGPT, and I said, hey, what would soul look like? And she gave me this flame. And I think it's interesting, tonight we've got here right after this talk the opening of the ceremonies of the Olympics and completing a 63-day carry of the flame. And as you know, the flame never goes out during the Olympics and never goes out between the Olympics as it's carried by the sun. And it was then that I realized that, yes, it's very important that we understand what it is that we're providing out into the marketplace, that we've got some passion for it, but without that deepest blue part of the flame, there isn't the energy that allows us to really take our passions and our purpose and what it is we do broader to the world. And if you want to think about AI just for a moment, I don't think it'd be a talk right now without that. I think AI, as Jensen said last week in NVIDIA, that the smartest person in the room is probably never going to be us moving forward. So it's got the logos nailed. It's learning how to emote and really build connection with us. But I feel and I think that it's going to be a really long time before it's ever to be able to bring ethos to anything. Even performers, great performers, have their nights where they feel like they were just performing and other nights when they were able to truly bring it. So it's even hard for us as humans to continue to bring the soul. And so that ethos is, I think, the essence. And if you unpack what Aristotle had to say, is that the ethos is the heart of your character. That's where you build trust, and it's Buddy being able to do the kind of moves, irrational things that he said. If a private equity firm were to buy his organization, even though it's a nonprofit, they never would have approved the accountants, those kind of decisions he made, but they were critical to the character and the trust he's been able to build with those distributors and pliers and the like. That's key. So, can you, though? You can install a soul, as Buddy has, but can you carry one to various ventures? And so I want to take you back to one of my early students at that MIT program, Randy Amon. He built a company called ABL Electronics. They built cabling systems for various technology companies. He scales it to 28 million. And the thing that I always admired is his business card. Now, he was the owner, but he put that in parens. He emphasized that he was the customer service manager. And if you unpacked it, and I gave him a phone call, he said, yeah, it's no doubt the soul of my company was the customer experience, so much so that he brought in a CEO and a CFO and a CT and everyone else so that he could literally take a year off. And he created the innovation that solved a significant customer experience issue in the entire industry. Now, he goes to a trade show, and a $2 billion company comes along and said, look, Randy, if that has really helped your customers have a greater experience and save you a few million, imagine what it would do for us at $2 billion. And they bought his company for something that had nothing to do with any multiple of EBITDA. And unlike almost every other founder that I've known that didn't even last 2 months of their 2-year, he stayed on, and not surprisingly, he became the senior VP of APC's customer care and quality. They then got by $40 billion Schneider Electric, where he then became the SVP there, ultimately the last 9 years, leading it for their VIP customers. And so it was his ability, and anyone who's ever done any business with Schneider said there's something magical about the kind of customer experience obsession that they've got. Which then leads me to, how do you actually pass maybe the torch on? And I want to take you down to Austin to Amy's Ice Cream. And there she is, Amy Simmons. And she's been able to, over the last 42 years, scale from the first to 19 locations. It's an iconic dining experience in that part of the country. Yet, she and I shared the stage together a few months ago. And she was lamenting how she really is in the mood to kind of let go, to move on. But she knows that there's nobody in her family who wants to take it over. There's nobody in the organization. And she knows if she sells it to somebody, they're likely to what? Kill the soul of her business, that it will die. And so we met up afterwards, and I said, Amy, what is the soul of Amy's Ice Cream? And like almost everybody else, she said, Verne, I don't know. No one's ever asked me that question. And I said, well, I think I've got a hint at what it is. Now, I know your purpose. Your purpose is that you wanted to get an ice cream. It's not going to change the world, but you know that ice cream is this beautiful moment that people get to share. But what was important to you was not just that moment, but the how you're going to support your purpose and your passion and your promises, is that you want to make sure that the customer experiences other moments in that process, and that those other moments are irreverent. And man, if you had a chance to see any of her stores are irreverent. The names of the ice creams are irreverent. They literally have the permission to throw ice cream and have fights within the stores. She even hosts every year an ice cream Olympics where they do the most amazing athletic feats with ice cream. And she said, you nailed it. That is the how behind why we've been so successful moving forward. And I said, is there anybody that could carry this torch? And I shared with her that was the thing that most amazed me with Steve Jobs. After his baby died the first time, and he was called back 10 years later after being in the wilderness years, he went on search for a single human being. And he found him, Johnny Ive, within the bowels of the organization. And the soul of Apple, even though its purpose was a bicycle for the mind and to go out and do great things in the world, at the heart of it, the soul of it was design. This maniacal focus on making sure that even the screw heads are lined up inside the device, not just on the outside. And he spent almost every lunch over 10 years with Johnny Ive, as Walter Isaacson shared in the book. And he made one other critical decision, and that was to launch Apple University, a place that would teach people how we do Apple moving forward. And that resulted in a company that didn't die after he died, and I bet against him. I thought it would, the genius with 1,000 helpers. But just 2 weeks ago, Fortune magazine named for the 19th year in the row Apple as the most admired company in the world. And I said, so Amy, who could be your Johnny Ive? He or she doesn't have to be CEO. Tim Cook's been that. And at that moment it dawned on her, she goes, I know, it's my niece. And that's when things changed. By the way, we shared the stage again just a few weeks ago, and she got on stage and she said, you know, my niece is in college. I don't want her to drop out. It's crazy. She said she really would love to work at Amy's Ice Cream, so I'm going to hold on until she graduates. And so, what I want to do is I want to leave a few questions with you. First, what is the soul of the organization? First, what is it that you're most maniacal about? What is your unique how and how you're going to go about your creative type work that you're going to do? And then, most importantly, be clear what is the heart, but understand what is the soul. The soul matters. Thank you.